Mac Power Users, episode 558. Apple Hardware Season with Zac Hall. Welcome back to Mac Power Users. My name is Stephen Hackett, and I'm joined as always by my friend and yours, Mr. David Sparks.
Hello, Stephen Hackett. How are you today?
I'm good, David. How are you?
I'm good as well. We are recording this episode in a time machine. We're literally in the police box, going forward and backward.
See, I was going to go with the DeLorean. Interesting.
All right, the DeLorean is good too. DeLorean is good.
Better. Made better.
Oh wow, man! You want to start that? Do you really want to go there?
I mean, maybe this is our thing.
I don't know, man. I don't know. But either way, we've got a guest today. Welcome back to the show, Zac Hall.
Hey, how are y'all doing?
We're doing great. Zac is now. What is your official title over at 9 to 5 Mac?
Yeah, I'm lead editor at 9 to 5 Mac.
Yeah, I was going to say head honcho, but hey, lead editor works too. But just my favorite fire hose on the internet, 9 to 5 Mac. You guys do such a great job of mixing good content plus news and rumors with taste. Good job, Zac.
Thank you.
And so happy to have you on the show. But as I was mentioning earlier in our DeLorean / police box, we're recording this show the day before Apple's announcement, but we're going to finish the show the day of Apple's announcement. So we're not going to talk about rumors or anything, but all three of us are going to be on right after the announcement.
That's right.
But for you, dear listener, it's all going to happen at once, like magic.
That's right. It's like just the magic of editing brings 2 days together. It's a miracle.
Yes, it's a miracle.
It's like a DeLorean parked by a police box.
Yeah,
wow.
Exactly. Or if you zip tied one to the top of a DeLorean. Okay. Zac, you, in addition to running things over at 9 to 5 Mac, you are a huge proponent of the Apple Watch and just Apple nerd in general. So we got to start out just kind of checking in with where you are on hardware.
Yeah, sure. Man, I mean, maybe it changes in a couple of days, but I don't know. Right now, I'll start from the Mac because a few years ago, I think it's been 2 years since I was here, and I think I was all like a 12-inch MacBook or something, and that's since gone away. But I'm on the 16-inch MacBook Pro in silver, and it really reminds me of like my first MacBook Pro, which was in 2009, in that has a reliable keyboard. It's really nice and everything, and that's my main machine, and I hook it up to a couple of LG 4K ultrafine monitors on VESA mounts, and so we can move them around and everything, and that's my home station, and then when I'm traveling, it's a great big screen, and I see like a 13-inch MacBook Pro, and I'm like, whoa, that's like ultra portable, like what is that thing? It's so thin.
Yeah.
But none of the 16-inch MacBook Pro feels too big for me. It's like it's perfect for what I want and need. So I can always fit enough stuff on the screen. iPhone wise, I'm using the iPhone 11 Pro Max, and if I have to say it right now, I'll probably keep using it for the year, or through the year, and then hope that maybe next year's phones in 2021 come out sooner than later, like in September and not November, because I think the guess is that the replacement for this specific model would be out in like late November of this year. So at this point, everyone already knows when that is. But I'm kind of banking on, well, I've got the battery case and another case for it, and it's just easier to do this one for another year. And I've actually never skipped an iPhone since the 4, so this will be a new experience.
Yeah, well, I like this because we're going to have immediate feedback. So at the beginning of the episode, Zac is saying he's not upgrading. And if you fast forward an hour, we will see exactly how that plays out.
That's right. iPad-wise, I have no iPad now. And a few months ago, I was all in. I went from the 2018 iPad Pro to the 2020 iPad Pro, which, it wasn't a massive change, but I used the screen size difference to go from the larger to the bigger. Had the Magic Keyboard and thought that was the coolest accessory, trackpad support and everything. But I was still finding that I wasn't using it in a way that made me feel good about the money spent on it. And so I finally just decided, kind of out of focus, just to have, the MacBook, the single MacBook be like my all computer experience, and then the phone be kind of the mobile thing. And I've been kind of content with that. But the iPad Air which as of this moment doesn't have a release date beyond October, but maybe in a few hours, we'll know. But I'm really tempted by it because the price, I feel like for the way that I use it makes more sense than being over $1,000 invested into an iPad. And so I'm really tempted at that one. It's just kind of a, fun tablet to use. And that's not my work machine. And then Apple Watch wise, I've got an Apple Watch Series 5 that I own. It's the white ceramic model because I'm so enthusiastic about it, and I was happy that was an option last year. This year it's not, and I wasn't going to upgrade, but I do have a review unit from Apple that I'll get to keep for several months, and it's the
And we're going to get into the new watches because you've actually spent time with the 6 and the SE, I believe, as well.
I haven't got the SE. I haven't seen the SE, but the 6 I've been wearing every day. And the SE, it's mostly you can kind of make, you can know what it all is, and it's just the price point that is the difference in how you feel about it, So
yeah. Well, we're definitely getting that, but I want to work backwards a little bit.
Sure.
First of all, the iPad. What were you using the iPad for when you had one?
So things I loved about it, LTE. So I would use it as like my mobile computer, and I can force all of my work into it and get it done. Multitasking is getting way better, especially with the interface where you can have the slide over app that like floats on top of your other two apps side by side, and then you can use the little gesture bar like on the iPhone to switch through. And so it's gotten much better in terms of I'm a Mac guy going to an iPad and I want to kind of have the same muscle memory. But I'm always just faster on the Mac, and I miss LTE. I'd love to have that on the Mac, some kind of a cellular connection, but I use Hotspot and it's pretty reliable. And that's mainly it. It's the things that I do on it is like if I'm on the treadmill or the elliptical, I'll like watch videos on it. And I miss that because I'm not going to put my massive MacBook Pro on that machine and sweat all over it and shake
that's
it down.
pretty funny.
So yeah. So for me, like it really is like it's a tablet, and it's not something that I want to do everything on and try and force it into that.
I think that's a common friction point, though. I think people who are power users on the Mac, people who have like dug in with Keyboard Maestro and have all their snippets together, and there are things you can do so fast on the Mac that it drives you crazy that you can't do them as fast on mobile.
And I'm really good on the phone for mobile. Like I remember one time I went to a Sonos event in New York and I did like the live blog from the phone, just on WordPress in the browser. And I've done that from the phone too with posts on 9to5Mac and then my other site, Space Explored, where it's like, oh, this is actually like something I'm really interested in. I want to write about it sooner than later. So let me just crank out a few paragraphs on the phone. Oh, that's like a full post, by the time I'm done with it. So just as much time as we spend on our phones have gotten very efficient. And so, sometimes I'll be at my desk with my MacBook Pro connected to the two displays, and I've got, TweetDeck running and Slack and, mail and everything's going on two screens. And I'll like lean back in my chair and I'll like look at Twitter on the phone and like message in Slack on the phone. And even though it's all on the Mac right there, I'm actually doing a lot of stuff on the phone. So, so not having that thing in the middle is kind of clarity for me, at least for now.
Now, do you do text entry on the phone with just tapping, or do you also do dictation and some of the other, methods?
My aunt and uncle, they do dictation and it impresses me because it's the most I've seen people do it for like 90% of text input. For me, I'm a tapper, or as of iOS, I guess 12 or so swiping, or 13. So I'm really efficient at both of those things. And dictation, I'm not efficient at. I think I can put out longer stuff with dictation because I can speak quickly and go back and edit it. But it's that going back and editing thing that kind of gets me. It breaks my rhythm. And if I'm just typing it, I'm pretty quick at it, or swiping for text entry.
There's definitely an edit, although it's much better. I mean, it just continues to get better. I feel like
you are notorious for dictation and using that on all things. So.
Yeah. Well, like drafts on the phone plus dictation is a very good combination if you want to get rough text in, but it's not final. I mean, you will have to go back and make some edits.
Now, I am a big voice memos user, especially now that it's on the phone and the watch and the iPad and the Mac. And I've got probably over 100 voice memos right now that I've got just from the last few months. And I've used drafts where you dictate it or you say it, and it's got what you say, and then it's got the text and everything. But I've just found that for some reason I'm just very comfortable using voice memos and having it built in. And if I do a clean install on something, it's going to be there. But with voice memos, I do things like if I have an idea that I want to like talk it out loud, I'll use voice memos for it. Or if my kids are talking or I'm talking to my kids and I just want to like record the moment without having my phone out as a camera or video camera,
Yeah.
I'll do voice memos for that. And if I've got like a music idea, so I've been working on some music just in my spare time, and if I've got that, I'll do that with voice memos. And I go back and I'll have like 20 that are just labeled with the date or location, and I'll go back and play through them, and then give them a shorthand name, and you can even categorize them. And now there's a new feature where you can enhance the audio, so it'll try to get rid of background noise in like one click. So that's kind of a surprising thing. I posted my home screen recently and someone asked, "Are you seriously a voice memos user like that heavily?" I'm like, "Oh yes, yeah, I am."
Yeah, it's funny. I think I'm going the opposite direction. Like the place I used to do a lot of voice memo type work was day one, because I do many day one entries per day. Like I'll make a day one entry after we finish this recording. And for the longest time, I used that built-in feature where you could record your voice and it would transcribe it using Apple's API. But I find at this point, Siri dictation is just so much better that if I just dictate text straight into it, I don't really care about keeping the captain's log audio recording of my voice,
Yeah.
And it just almost needs little or no edit now. So I just almost never do that anymore.
Yeah.
Now, the last thing I want to talk about, because this is where you started. Last time, you were definitely a 12-inch MacBook fan. I mean, I felt like you came on the show and you just like made the case for it. And, I'm sure we had listeners like, oh man, now I need to go buy a 12-inch MacBook. And then you just come in and casually say, yeah, well, now I use 16. And it's
and there was a 5K iMac or iMac Pro in between. So, but I sold that when the 16-inch MacBook Pro came out. And so, it's kind of the nature of the job is it helps to have experience with different computers, and, you can kind of justify, like I'm working with more photographers now that I'm doing the space stuff, and they have, like they don't change anything because it can break their workflow. And I'm like, oh, you got the awesome MacBook with the SD card on it, from ages ago. That's really neat. I'm kind of jealous of that. And then meanwhile, like I'm running Big Sur beta, and it's like, that's crazy. But I'm kind of learning from them, to kind of find my balance of, since 2013, I've tried to get everything as soon as possible and upgrade every year. So if it means selling the old thing to kind of fund the new thing, then doing that. And it kind of gets exhausting, and I just can't say that I've used something for more than a year or so. And so I'm trying now to kind of break that habit and use something for, it's at least a couple of years, maybe 3 years.
Yeah, and there's also like less overhead because, I have more hardware than you. So it's like every update means multiple items I've got to go and update. And, I recently started using, an app, and I had to install it on 2 different Macs, and just everything has extra overhead.
Yeah, that's not to say though that when the iMac updated with the same the matte finish as the XDR display for a lot less money, I was very tempted by that, and it's I'm fueled by the rumors of what's coming, and kind of having educated guesses at what's coming to hold off on those big purchases, because that's probably the best Intel iMac that we'll see. But I'm very curious what the next thing will be and if it will be redesigned. And I'm sure that matte finish or display layer won't go away. So maybe in 2021 I add to just the single MacBook Pro. But on the same side, like I'm super interested in a very portable machine that I just use for kind of blogging. And
you mean like a 12-inch MacBook?
Yeah, like if they do that with an ARM chip, it's going to be an instant purchase because for the space stuff, I'll go out to remote viewing launch sites, and I'll bring my MacBook and I'll have it like on the roof of the car, and I'll be trying to live tweet and run some things that way. And it's great to have that if you want to bring your desk with you, but if you just want to have like fast input and it's something super portable, it kind of feels like bringing out a big screen TV in a place where it's not really welcome. And so I really want something that's super portable that it does add weight to the bag and everything. So, and I lately I've been primarily traveling by motorcycle, and I'll go on 3-hour trips. I've been on an 8-hour trip on the bike, and in that situation, a couple of pounds doesn't make a difference going to the car, but if it's on your back the whole time, then it kind of does. So I kind of want to optimize for travel. So next year, I think there'll be some more Mac purchases in my life.
Yeah, I feel like we're going to have you back next year, and you're going to have all different equipment, Zach.
Yeah.
Let's just...
You just need to get a Mac Pro with wheels and have it like a sidecar for your bike. Problem solved.
That would be awesome. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, Steven could ride on it.
Yeah. The wheels are great.
I bet they
I don't
are.
know how they would do out on the open road, but we'll see.
I bet they are.
I can just see Steven with like one of those old fashioned motorcycle helmets straddling Zach's Mac Pro, and his feet, it's like have stirrups on it like a horse.
It's gonna be very specific.
Yeah. Well, I'm being
working
descriptive in case any of the audience members want to just draw that for us.
Oh,
Yeah, go ahead. Prototype it up.
Yeah. Anyway, Zach, good on you for minimizing your gear, but I have no faith it's going to stay that way.
Neither do I. I hate going on the record talking about it because, the best intentions are to just stay with what you have and ride it out. And then the new thing comes and it's like, well, you find reasons to justify it, especially when you can sell something and kind of fund the new thing. Then it feels less obnoxious.
I mean,
We'll
literally,
see.
as we're recording this, by the time we get to the end of this episode, there could be a 12-inch MacBook with Apple Silicon in it, and Zach could be changing his mind during this episode. That's my wish.
My priority is I didn't upgrade the watch this year, and that kind of paid off with getting an opportunity to review one long term, and that kind of satisfies the need to play with the new thing. Then the phone would be the most interesting thing if not for the timing of the iPad Air, which is it's kind of neat, like the colors and Touch ID and the power button instead of having your hand over the camera and it's like move your hand on the iPad Pros. But then it's the ARM Macs that are the most interesting, and that's where I spend most of my time professionally is on the Mac, and so that is the top priority if I'm buying new things, is Mac and then iPad and then phone probably. So, and buying one kind of means probably don't do the other two or at least one of the other ones.
Yeah, I think Steve and I are the same boat. I'm fascinated by this transition, and I just can't wait to see how it actually happens.
I mean, I really want to run Instagram on the Mac and not be able to do it on the iPad. Because if you just run the native iPhone app on your Mac, then that's so neat. And it's actually useful because, with the different sites of the network, we try to keep an Instagram account active. And, going to the phone for that isn't great. Just having it out on the Mac all the time, it's really useful. So I'm so excited for that ability, as long as they don't, turn off the feature.
This episode of Mac Power Users is brought to you by 1Password. Go to 1password.com/MPU in all caps to learn more, sign up for a free 30-day trial, and get 20% off. 1Password is my go-to way to keep my logins and other critical information safe. Because it syncs everywhere, it means I can get into my accounts on my iPhone, my iPad, my Windows laptop, my Mac Pro, wherever I am. 1Password is with me. Because 1Password always supports the newest technology, it means that I can log in with Face ID or Touch ID depending on the device that I'm on. And with macOS Big Sur coming soon, they're even going to have that login capability on the Mac. Just automatically, I'm really looking forward to it. One new feature 1Password recently announced is partnership with privacy.com. You can now use 1Password to create virtual credit cards in the browser to make online payments more safely. You can create as many virtual cards as you need and control where and how they're used. So if that number gets stolen, it doesn't matter because it's a one-time use number. Your actual credit card number is safe and sound. That is a really, really cool addition to 1Password. So you can learn more, sign up for a free 30-day trial at 1password.com/MPU. When you sign up, you'll get a massive 20% off. Our thanks to 1Password for keeping us safe online and for their support of the show. So Zach, you're a big proponent of the Apple Watch. It's a lot of your coverage at 9 to 5. You focus on that, and we're coming now about a month after Apple announced not just one new Apple Watch, but two: the SE and the Series 6. WatchOS 7 is here. In fact, there's an update just today to address battery life concerns on WatchOS 7. I kind of want to see like how you think about these two new Apple Watches. The first time we've ever had two new models. What should people consider when trying to choose if this is the year to upgrade or not?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think for a lot of people, these two are less, maybe not for this audience, but for most people, it's less of an upgrade, or it's more that is, are you going to buy this watch? Is this going to be your first Apple Watch now? And when you're having that decision as a first time buyer, then I think the Apple Watch SE is the default, and then you need to decide, should you go up to the Series 6 or maybe try to find, there's also the Series 3 in the lineup still. So is that more in your budget and fit your needs? Or, is it worth trying to find a deal with a Series 5 still out there, or a Series 4? So, yeah, I think iPhone SE is like the default, and the naming is kind of funny to me because I don't know. I don't love the naming, but I can't think of a better name for it. They got themselves in a corner with the series number names, because it is better than some older watches and everything. But it's a very good default watch, and I imagine that it'll stick around for a while before it gets updated. The Series 6, if you already have an Apple Watch, then I think coming from a Series 3 is the place where you go to a Series 6. If you've got a 4 or a 5, then it is an upgrade. I mean, you get the always on display, and you get ECG, and you get the new blood oxygen sensor. But I think you need to have a specific use case for those things, and it needs to really solve a problem for you to upgrade, because we're probably a year away from another redesign. And so if you have the 4, then maybe wait, because as I use each one of these watches, it kind of can pick up each one, and there's not a whole lot of differences day to day with how I use them. I'd say like Series 4 and later, I'm happy with using, even with the always on display in the Series 5. For me, the way that I use it's not a make or break deal, and sometimes I turn it off just to get, if I'm not going to be able to charge as soon as I want to. But and even if you've got a first gen watch, I mean, any new watch is an upgrade, including SE. If you've got a Series 3, then the SE is an upgrade, and it's probably a pretty good option compared to, say, but spending a whole lot more on an upgrade. But that's kind of where I'm at. Is the SE is the default, and then you really need to have a reason to want a 6, whether it's health features. Like if I was buying a watch for my dad, for example, I would have to buy the Series 6 for him, because it would be the different health features, having the ECG, having the blood oxygen sensor, just in case those become useful in the future. And I know that he'll use it for a long time. The SE, lacks some of those things. It's got some pretty good health features too, like heart rate detection, and I believe fall detection's there. But the ECG one is the one that you see the most in the news of. This feature is believed to have saved lives, and that's something that's pretty powerful, I think.
Yeah, the thing about the SE I can't get over is Apple has never told us what SE means, right?
No,
I mean, I
not even
thought
the Mac days, right?
Yeah, I thought it was like, is that a small phone? Is that what it means? So it's a small, but it's not a small watch. I really don't. Maybe do they know?
It's not really a special edition.
Yeah, definitely not special edition.
With the iPhone SE, the first one that was the size of an iPhone 5, like that was the cheaper, smaller phone, so it fit both of those. With the current iPhone SE, it's the size of an iPhone 6, which is not super small. It's still the most affordable, and then this new iPhone lineup that will be announced by the time this is out, that'll change the kind of the dynamic of that. But on the Apple Watch, that's where it feels the least, it doesn't fit the most, I think, but I don't know of a better name for it. Maybe if they called it Apple Watch Sport, like the original lineup included. But it is a good default to start from, I think, is the SC, and then you can see, do you want to have the higher end, or do you want to save some money and go to a Series 3? And there's some things like you can only have cellular on the SE and Series 6 now, unless you buy it from somebody that's not Apple. But yeah, what does SE stand for? They probably don't even know either.
Yeah, I do think that like they realized when they had the feature where you can put it on your kid to track your kid's location or an elderly relative that may have trouble, remembering things, that they realized, well, there's only one watch we're selling that will work for this, and it's our most expensive one. And, coming up with something, less expensive that can still work with that whole system was a good idea. But I almost feel like the whole SE thing is an afterthought.
Yeah, maybe next year it'll make a lot more sense if the price goes down and the Series 3 goes away. Because in WatchOS 7, there's the mode where you can set up an Apple Watch for a family that may not have an iPhone. And so it could be an elderly family member or a kid. And all you need is an Apple Watch Series 4 or later with cellular. And then that can be set up from your phone. And it has its own number, and you can manage certain things from your phone. If it's a kid's watch, you can even put it in the school mode where it has a special watch face that includes analog and digital time, and it's like bright yellow like a school bus, and it limits who you can contact and what apps you can use, and teachers can look at that watch face and know, oh, that's the school mode, that this watch isn't used for cheating. That's all very cool, but then they got rid of the cellular Series 3 as a new thing, and they don't support the school mode, or they don't support the family mode on Series 3 cellular that was previously sold. So that's where it's kind of weird to me, is it's not the cheapest watch, which is kind of the one you might go for family, especially kids, when you're not worried about ECG, which doesn't really work with kids anyway. Yeah, so maybe next year if it goes down to 199, it makes more sense as the affordable entry level watch. But right now it's a little bit awkward in that it's not really the one that you buy for your kids when they still sell the Series 3 for $200. And then but you can't use the Series 3 for $200 with that family mode. It's kind of an awkward place for it to be this year.
Yeah, I could totally see in a year from now they release a Series 7. The SE stays exactly what it is right now. But
Exactly,
maybe the
yeah.
price goes down to 199, the Series 3 drops off the line, and then it's kind of a better story.
Yeah, and by calling it SE and not a series number name, you can have, like right now, Series 3, SE, Series 6, you kind of get that there's a 3-year gap between 3 and 6. If it's SE, Series 7, and they get rid of the Series 6, as they've been getting rid of watches each year, then it's just, oh, it's kind of like right now, it's SE and 6. So you don't make that big comparison and generation gap.
I hadn't thought about that. Maybe that is SE. It's multi-year because
Yeah,
the SE phone was multi-year.
that's right. Yeah. But what
Yeah.
about in the Mac SE days? Because that's before my time. But
Oh no, the SE30 was the special edition. That was the Lust computer. That was the
Okay.
one I wanted to sell a kidney to buy. If there was
Yeah.
one computer I ever really wanted, that was it.
Zach, do you have any feeling on how often a typical Apple Watch user may upgrade their hardware?
So right now, I think that like any Apple Watch that isn't the first generation is a good Apple Watch. The first generation, it did not age well at all. But Series 1 and Series 2, like those are getting long in the tooth now. And if you've got one of those, then you're going to be very happy with any upgrade. That's a positive. If you got a Series 3 later, if Apple still sells your watch, then it still supports WatchOS updates, then an upgrade, unless you're kind of an annual upgrader or there's something that you really want to try, the watch doesn't change that much year to year that an upgrade is essential. And I find that the people that I know, family and friends, that I rarely see them change their watch year to year, if at all. Like my mother-in-law still has a Series 1. My dad has the Series 2 that I gave him, and some friends of mine have their Series 4s when they first got Apple Watches. And when Apple talks about watch sales, they don't give any kind of numbers out, but they do talk about how many people are first time buyers. And it's still the majority, from what I understand, is that most watch sales are not upgrades, but they're first time buyers. So we're still in that phase where, maybe it changes this year, next year, because the Series 2 didn't get WatchOS 7 support and the Series 3 doesn't get as many new watch faces. And if they drop the Series 3 next year, then especially, I think then that says anything Series first generation to Series 3 is needs to be upgraded. If they break compatibility with your phone, then that's another one. But I think it's still a lot of first time buyers and not a lot of upgraders yet, except for the more technical types where we want to test everything new and have the latest thing.
Now, one of my favorite features with the Series 5, in fact, the reason I did a 1 year upgrade last year was the always on watch face. And Apple says this year with Series 6, it's brighter. I've never really had a problem seeing it with the existing brightness of my 5, but how material is the difference between that brightness as a tester?
It's tricky for me to test because I've got the Series 5 with the always on display, and I've got the Series 6 with the always on display that's supposedly brighter at full peak. It's still 1000 nits as the peak brightness that you can have, and that's when the screen's active. So the always on screen when it's kind of in dim mode is some fraction of that. And the Series 6, because of the removal of force touch and that whole layer and a bigger battery inside, then they're allowing the screen to turn brighter when it's dimmed in sunlight. If you're indoors, you're never going to see the difference because it's always going to be a lower fraction than when you're outside. But the tricky thing about it is the Series 5 I have has the Sapphire display, and the Series 6 I have is the Ion X display. And the Ion X display is just better at being brighter in bright sunlight. So it's meant for that's kind of the not just to be cheap, but also to make it's more for, using as a runner's watch kind of thing, a sports watch where it's easier to have a higher brightness with the same nits, just more legible in sunlight. With the Sapphire, it's less it's not going to scratch as easily, but it's also going to be a little bit more dim to view, even with the same brightness level. So it's hard to compare because the Series 5 that I have is always going to be a bit dimmer than the Series 6. But what I can tell so far is that it's not an overnight like make or break change to where if it didn't work for you before, now it will, or if it was okay before, now it's great. I would be hard pressed to find that as a change this year if it wasn't announced. And I think the change that they said was like 20% or something like that. So it's not much brighter. It's just a little bit, and only in those outdoor scenarios. So if you're outside a lot, maybe it's a big deal. And if you've got the INX glass on an aluminum model, then you're going to see that change. But if you're going from a still watch to an aluminum watch, you're probably not going to see that change.
Yeah, I will say that I just love that feature. I mean, that's the biggest improvement to the Apple Watch for me since it launched. Just anytime I look at my watch, I can see what time it is. As silly as that sounds.
I think for me, it might just be just a how long of one watches thing, and it's been off and on before. But I got so used to, and my enthusiasm for the watch, I got so used to the way that the original watch worked, for 4 generations, that when the Series 5 came out, it's like it is a great thing. But I had a big battle with battery life and getting through the day. And I got used to turning that feature off and kind of managing the feature. I really wish it was a control center toggle. So if you're like, I'm not going to make it back to a charger before, bedtime, and you could toggle it off because you've got to dig in through settings to do it right now. But I'm mostly happy either way, but I'm glad it's there. And it's something that would be cool on the phone too. I think on the phone, might appreciate even more just having the phone sit on the desk and see a new alert come in without tapping it or anything. It's cool technology though.
Yeah. Now, you and I are overdue for a fitness competition, and you'll probably destroy me because my gym closed. But but I know that you're very active with the fitness and the watch. How have things changed for iOS 7? We didn't even really cover iOS 7 on the show because we ran out of time. But we also knew you were coming in. And we wanted to get the story from you.
Yeah, WatchOS 7. Like, here's one of the things that I think that most modern watches are pretty good for anybody, is because the fitness features are kind of the same. The always on display in the Series 5 or Series 6 changes a little bit because when you're using Apple's workout app, that's an app that does update in the dimmed mode. So you can, and that makes the watch feel faster. So if I'm going for a run with the Series 5 or 6 and I glance at the watch to see, what is my pace? How long have I ran? Time or distance? Then that's where it feels faster because there isn't that half second of delay of the watch turning on. Even if you're making the same gesture, you kind of glance at it in that dim state and then it brightens up, and that just feels faster. And when you're kind of doing a high pace activity, then a second feels a lot longer than it does just kind of hanging out. But feature wise, I mean, even Series 3 and later is where the watch really became a big sports watch for me, with the ability to have LTE and do all the things, where you've got GPS for tracking runs, and you've got cellular data for streaming music and sharing location, and having even more accurate location data with LTE. So Series 3 and later is really where the sports stuff comes in for me, and it hasn't changed that much beyond always on display. What I'm really interested in is Apple Fitness Plus that's coming, and I've had an idea for a few years where the Apple Watch, it's so good at showing you, here is every workout that the watch can track, whether it's elliptical or treadmill or rowing, but you've got to do your own research into knowing what even is an elliptical. How do you do a rowing workout? What do you need for that? And then beyond that, what are the kind of goals and metrics you want to look for? And it's all your own research. None of it is kind of documented by the watch itself or even on the phone without you going and looking for something. With Fitness Plus, I kind of view that as, now there's content, even if you have to subscribe for it and pay for it, for the workout app. It's not just here's access to exercise classes, but also, here you've got the watch now. We're all using the watch too, and the context is your activity rings are on the display. We're showing you data, goals, shouting out goals that you might have for this exercise, and even the movements. You can watch what we're doing and try and recreate that. So I'm really curious and really excited about Fitness Plus, even as another subscription service that you've got to pay for, just because to me it's a big part of the other half of the watch experience, and not just the watch can do these things, but showing you how to do them, and giving you practical goals to try to achieve with it.
Yeah, I think that integration they're going to be able to do with the Apple Watch definitely sets this apart from some of the other services, right? Like, since COVID, our gym has been closed too. My wife and I have found a couple apps and that have videos, and you're kind of following along, but the tracking and what's going on are sort of distinct experiences. So I am excited to see how they bring those things together. I think it's super clever in their part to say, look, we have the watch, we know what's going on, we know where you are in the video. Let's make these things more connected.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm excited for it. It's one of those services where I would pay for it anyway, but it's going to be included in the Apple One services bundle, the premier one, for I think $30 a month, that I also pay for anyway. So it's kind of going to be a freebie for me, or at least make that bundle a better value.
Mm-hmm.
I can't wait for it. And it's been neat. Apple's going to give away 3 months of service when you buy a new watch, which is a good promotion. Best Buy and other retailers have done a 6-month promotion so that you try and get the watch from them instead. And it's kind of cool, like seeing Best Buy do a bundle for a service that's not even out yet, or a promo. I'm excited for it. And I did some research into like all the trainers for the Apple Fitness Plus service, because they said trainers that you'll recognize, or I didn't know any of them, but I'm not deep into that world. But what I found is that the majority come from Soul Cycle, or that kind of a thing, where they're known trainers if you are in that world. So like no one from Peloton, but definitely from their competitors. So
I am kind of surprised that maybe that's the next penny to drop in this, that Apple doesn't have like hardware that they sell, that like get our bicycle or get our rowing machine, and it's going to connect to this app. I mean, I could see them going that direction at some point.
Yeah, years ago they introduced Gym Kit, where the watch you wave it next to a treadmill or elliptical or a bike, and your watch pairs with the machine. And so if you're on a treadmill, for example, the watch can share your heart rate with the machine without having to have your hands on those metal pieces on the treadmill, or wear another Bluetooth heart rate monitor. It uses the watch for that. And then from the machine can share your exact speed and incline, so that the watch has a better idea of your pace and everything. So you get the most accurate data, because the watch otherwise really can't tell incline at all, on a treadmill, because you're still running in place. So that's been a thing for several years, but it hasn't been on anything consumer. It's been Gym Kit. It's been made for gym equipment that costs $10,000+. The Peloton Bike Plus is the first thing that's under $10,000. I think it's $1,500 or so, that has Gym Kit. so that you've got, and that's just a bike, a stationary bike. So it's not a treadmill. Their new treadmill doesn't have it. So there's definitely, I think, a need to see more consumer, home gym equipment. And that's what I'd expect the most versus Apple kind of doing their own thing, is to find companies that already make consumer gym equipment, not stuff that's made for the actual gym, industrial stuff, but
Yeah.
something that's, $1,500 or hopefully much less. And that changes the experience of using that equipment. And if there's a Fitness Plus tie-in, then they're going to be using machines on their videos. So I think there needs to be kind of they can't recommend the gym kit stuff yet because it doesn't exist. It's only in the high end stuff that you can buy. So I hope they make that partnership more than they have so far. So that at least they can say, this is what we recommend if you're using Fitness Plus as your treadmill, your bike or your elliptical.
But it is interesting though, like they create an ecosystem that they don't really participate in. I mean, the
Yes.
HomeKit, you could make the same argument. Like,
Mm-hmm.
Apple of a different age would probably have light bulbs and switches and everything with the Apple logo on them, and they'd be overpriced, but they'd work. And they just don't seem interested in that these days.
Yeah, and there's some rumors. I think Mark Gurman of Bloomberg has some reporting on Apple looking into doing their own light bulbs, at least, or their own hardware. And with iOS 14, one of the new features in HomeKit is the ambient light temperature stuff, where kind of like True Tone on a Mac or phone, the light temperature changes throughout the day, so that at night it's warmer and during the day it's cooler to kind of match outdoor light, indoor light. And Hue makes temperature changing bulbs, and I don't think it's reached iOS yet, that it's actually shipped yet. And it's one of those things where, if Apple did their own light bulbs, they'd have it on day one if the feature was finished. So it's definitely, I wish they could do more in that case.
And the one thing I would like to say is, if you are a Peloton owner and you love it, you do not need to write me. It's okay. It reminds me of the old days with Sonos. I've got all these listeners and even some of my legal clients that are just so into their Peloton bikes. And I think it scratches a very similar itch as being in the Apple ecosystem.
Mm-hmm.
I think they take really good care of you. They charge you for it. But people that go in are happy. But you don't need to write me. That's okay.
Yeah. I had a Peloton bike for a while and I was pretty happy with it. But cycling isn't really my thing. Running is more what I enjoy. And their Peloton Tread is like this super high-end treadmill that cost over $4,000. And they sent me one on loan, and I fell in love with it. It was like the best treadmill belt I've ever ran on. And
it should be.
Yeah. The display is like a big iMac Pro in front of you, like 34 inches, and space gray kind of color. But, that's never something I'd purchase on my own. And I had to send it back, and there's definitely a need for sub $1,000 equipment that works with your watch in the same way. Yeah.
The funny thing I've discovered about myself is, while I've been going to the gym for a while, the thing I really didn't like about it, once I admit to myself, is I don't really like the coach yelling at me the whole time and the loud music,
Yeah.
So I have a bunch of free weights. I've been kind of slowly adding to my gear, and I got this app called Fitbod, which is $60 a year, which is less than 1 month of gym membership here.
Mm-hmm.
And it gives me, I tell it all the equipment I own. And as I keep adding equipment, the gym, I'm holding up air quotes, grows. And it gives me a workout, and I do that. And I just play like YouTube videos that I want to watch. And I sit here and do my workout. So I'm not sure I'm going to really be a customer for Fitness Plus.
Do you think you'll have the Apple One bundle?
Yeah, I probably will. So I'll have access to it. But I just, I don't need somebody yelling at me. I'm good.
Yeah. And I'm kind of right there with you. I think I've had a very good experience using Peloton in the past, especially with running. Like, you can take an iPad and use the Peloton app, a digital app on the iPad. And I've never tried to seek out a running coach before. And it's all just kind of been, what I listen to and what I read to try. But having someone kind of show that on a video and you're watching it, sometimes in real time, I have found value in that. But if I'm doing the elliptical, there's not a lot of coaching involved there. It's me doing the elliptical, and that's like my movie watching time. I'll say I'm going to do an hour session and get through this movie and break it up into a few parts. So yeah, but I am excited about it because I think it's a big it's a big, how to use the watch. Well, this is Apple giving you a big answer. You don't have to kind of figure it out on your own.
This episode of the Mac Power Users is brought to you by Squarespace. Go to squarespace.com/MPU and make your next move and enter offer code MPU at checkout to get 10% off your first purchase. We've talked about Squarespace before. It is the place to go when you want to create a presence on the internet. Whether you want to make your next online store, portfolio, blog, maybe you're just going to have a baby and you want to share that with the world, you can do that through Squarespace. Squarespace is the all-in-one platform that lets you do just that. There's nothing to install, no patches to worry about, no upgrades needed. You don't have to worry about that stuff. Squarespace has got you covered. They have award-winning 24/7 customer support if you need any help, and they let you quickly and easily grab a unique domain name. And all of those award-winning templates are beautifully designed for you to show off your great ideas. You can even customize them, and anybody can customize a Squarespace site and make it look like just their own. I've done that with both the MacSparky.com site and the SparksiestQ.com site. So both my day job and my MacSparky job have websites that were built with Squarespace, and I'm not alone. We've heard from so many listeners over the years that built their websites with Squarespace, whether you've got a restaurant, a medical practice, or maybe you're getting married. Squarespace is the place to do it. They make it super easy for anyone, and the plans start at just $12 a month. But you can start a trial with no credit card required by going to squarespace.com/MPU. And when you decide to sign up, use the offer code MPU to get 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain and to show your support for the Mac Power Users. Once again, that's squarespace.com/MPU and code MPU to get 10% off your first purchase. We thank Squarespace for their support of the Mac Power Users and all of Relay FM. Squarespace, make your next move, make your next website.
So Zach, I think it was maybe earlier this year. So one thing I want to ask you is the history of it. You have, while also writing for 9 to 5 Mac, you've branched out and you launched Space Explored, which is now part of the 9 to 5 family of websites where you are covering the space industry, which is something you and I share with my show Liftoff. I love Space Explored. I love what you're doing with it. So congratulations on the
Thank
launch. How did you get into this? It seems like it's a little bit different than your everyday coverage you were doing.
Yeah, and I'm gonna be honest. I listened to a few episodes of Liftoff before my space interest, and then and it's cool. Afterwards, it's been like the biggest resource for me because I went back from the start. I listened to like the first or like the most recent episodes. I was going backwards for a long time, and it's just so neat. Like I wanted to learn more, and having a 2 weeks worth of information discussion of like the news of that week was so valuable. So I think I might have completed all the episodes. I was working backwards and I was working from the start. I might have met in the middle at some point, but I love Liftoff. It's so cool.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. So last November 2019. Yeah, sounds right. I saw a tweet go by, maybe got retweeted from the NASA Social account, which I didn't know, what NASA Social was, but it's kind of an outreach program where NASA tries to get people who have audiences that are not space related and share, a current space event with them. And then the idea is that more people are exposed to what's happening, at least with NASA and their partners right now. And it was a tweet inviting you to apply to attend a rocket launch, and it was December the 4th was the launch. It was a SpaceX Falcon 9 launch, commercial resupply services mission to send cargo to the International Space Station. And I didn't know what any of that meant really. And, I just thought, oh, this is cool. Like I like space in theory. I like kind of sci-fi stuff, and this would be very neat to go to and do something different. And I applied and got accepted and got to go to. Ended up being 3 days because of the first launch day, the rocket didn't lift off, but was surrounded by really smart people in all their fields. Different. I was kind of coming from the Apple reporter background. Other people were, social media influencers with fashion or other areas. One guy was like a deer hunter, and he had a whole YouTube channel about deer hunting, and. But then there were a number of people who also were just like super interested in space, and
Sure.
and that's why they were there too. And I felt like like if I'm around, the average person, then I kind of feel like I'm the Apple expert in the room.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been doing 9 to 5 Mac since 2013, so I've got 7 years of experience to draw from. I felt like I was the dumbest person, at least the most ignorant person about space in the room when we were having lunch with all these people. And I had no idea about like NASA's plans to go back to the moon with the Artemis program. I had no idea that SpaceX was, had been around since the early 2000s, and that Blue Origin was even a thing, and what ULA was and all this stuff, and that launches were happening from a few parts of the country, and how NASA astronauts got to space, and everything. And I went home, and I was just had enough exposure. I was excited about seeing a launch in person. That was just amazing. And it was from what's normally a press location, the NASA Causeway, where you're about 3 miles away, which is a good bit closer. I think 7 miles is about what you are from Kennedy Space Center at the Visitor Center. So it was a really, really close experience. Seeing the launch, the fire was much brighter than I ever expected. And then, then you kind of hear the launch, the sounds several seconds after once it reaches you, and then you kind of feel the vibrations and everything. So it was a really like high adrenaline experience. And I had an 8-hour drive home after that. I just saw a launch, and I'm going to be in the car for 8 hours. And all I wanted to do was just like process everything I'd heard and like saw. And so I went home, and like all I could think about was space stuff. And like I wanted to learn more, and Liftoff became like my Walk a Dog podcast. And it was like, here are 2 people I already know, Jason Snell and Stephen Hackett, and I know and trust you guys, and you were like my coaches. And there was a point where like, okay, that's pretty good background information for at least the last year of events. So I've got a little bit more context now. And I was reading books and watching documentaries and movies and everything. And then my boss, Seth Weintraub, who started the 9 to 5 network, had mentioned that he's always been interested in not space so much, but kind of aerospace, and he's a pilot and everything. And he said, there's always been room for a site that at least covers plane news and things like that. And we have a drone DJ site where it's all about, drones and aerial photography and everything. And he said, maybe it could be part of that. And I was like, I don't really want to work with another team. I'm kind of used to being in charge of 9 to 5 Mac. And what I want to do is create something all my own. So I kind of let his idea sit there, and then I pitched him more and more on my idea. And he was like, we'll see. So then I think last February, I just built it and launched it. And it was my spare time hobby I've got, now that I know what's happening in space, where it was before SpaceX had launched astronauts from the US and had their first human space flight, there were a lot of big markers coming up that I wanted to be able to share with people who follow me for Apple News, and kind of expose them in the way that I was through NASA Social. And so throughout the day working on 9 to 5 Mac, I'd see things on Twitter. I kind of had the experience of knowing the best places to follow to find breaking news in Apple. And I built that same kind of, followership of following different accounts and people, reporters for space stuff. And so I was learning things on the fly and saving it to read later. And Space Explored kind of started as, if I want to read this, I also want to share it. And so it was the place where I process my reading list and say, in the context of a greater context, or for an audience that's coming in because you care about the latest iPhone rumor, here's what this means, in big picture scale. Mm-hmm. And that's where it started. And it was just my side project, like on nights and weekends, basically from February through May. And then right before the Demo 2 launch, and at the end of May, my boss was like, so you've been doing this, you're dedicated to it, let's bring it in house. And it's like, really? That's so cool. So all of a sudden, it's linked from 9 to 5 Mac at the top of the page, and instead of like me doing my own WordPress thing, it's on WordPress VIP with the other 5 sites in our network, and just way more resources and things that I write I can hand off to our copy editors, and I'm getting paid for it. So that's been tremendous. And then because it's now, as much my job as 9 to 5 Mac, I've been able to go to press events. So for the Mars 2020 Perseverance rover launch, I got to go to that as press, and I'll get to go to the Crew 1 launch in November as press. And it's happening so fast but it's a total dream that I didn't even know I had come true. It's so neat.
Yeah, my falling into it was not that dissimilar. I went to a NASA social in 2015. It was a supply mission SpaceX was flying, and actually they lost their rocket on that flight, which was very interesting being there, because with NASA social you kind of get to play press, like you get to be in the press briefings, and it is a really cool program. There'll be a link in the show notes if you have any interest in space. They have these all over the country. You don't have to just go to Florida. In fact, the second one I went to was in Huntsville, but it is a neat way to get to kind of see behind the scenes. And they lost that vehicle. It was uncrewed. It was just, sending food and science experiments and clothing up to the International Space Station. But it was so interesting to be able to be there. And we had already started liftoff, but that exposure through NASA Social can be a really big deal, and it can be fun to get to go and see things behind the scenes. And, when I was in Huntsville, getting to see like actual hardware that will fly on the SLS, which is NASA's new rocket they're building. It's really incredible to get to see this stuff up close and ask questions. And being 3 miles away from a rocket launch is really incredible. And the Falcon 9 I saw, it didn't break up until it was way downrange. It was, well on its way. So it's not like it blew up on the launch pad.
So you saw most of the launch happen.
Yeah.
Plus more.
But yeah, it really is a remarkable thing. And I definitely want to do more of them when travel is a little bit more possible. But, one thing I find interesting about Space Explorer is that you have built out that team, and you've been able to expand that to be, like you said, beyond just you. Right. How do you go about managing a team of, contributors and editors, and both on the 9 to 5 side and Space Explorer? How do you go about that sort of work?
Yeah, so I've been involved with, I guess, the past several years of 9 to 5 Mac hiring, where Guillermo Rambo was, we all knew him as the person who was leaking iPhone 10 information from a HomePod firmware that went public on accident. And that fall, we had someone send us the final version of the iOS update for that year. And before the event and everything, it had way more information, but we kind of hit a dead end on what we could find as from just putting it on our phones, as reckless as that was. And so I contacted Rambo and Stephen Troughton Smith, and I said, we have this. If you want to work with us, I'll share it with you, and just post it. Let us post it first before you share it, and share it with a link to our coverage. And that was my first experience in seeing there's someone who has a talent that we don't have that I wish was on our team because we'd be stronger for it. And it worked out with Rambo, to the point where he's helped us so much with just understanding what we're looking at, over the past several years of leaks. And then Felipe Esposito is another person who we hired. They both are from Brazil, and he had found titanium and ceramic as finishes for the Series 5 watch through a firmware leak as well. And so it's like there's these people that I think are talented that I wish were on our team because we're covering what they do. So why not have them join us? And it's worked out. I think you're friends with Bradley Chambers. He was someone who I knew from podcast, and I was in Chattanooga for something with family. I knew that he lived there, and I said, I know that you're a runner. Let's go run together. And a conversation from just running together and getting to know each other in that experience became a job offer, to the point where I don't think we could operate without him right now. He's so useful for everything he does for our network. And so that experience kind of gave me, the how-to of how to find talent and integrate them into our network and work together. And so for Space Explored, I felt so fortunate because I've got 7 years experience with 9 to 5 Mac and going to Apple events, and I've had some really cool private meetings and things like that. So I've got the confidence there. And the experience with recognizing talent and wanting to bring them in, to now with Space Explored, everything is modeled after 9 to 5 Mac, where, there were a couple of guys, Seth Krakowski and Daryl Sase, who do a podcast live on YouTube called Rapid Unscheduled Discussions, like Rapid Unscheduled Disassembly, but not that. So they call it RUDS, but they're both just super knowledgeable, and they're doing this podcast is just a total hobby. They're not making money from it, and they don't care how many people tune in and listen and watch. And they're on a strict schedule for it. They take it very seriously and get good guests. And so they I was very interested in them. And then Seth Kurkowski is a 9 to 5 Mac reader as well. So when I followed him, he was like, "Why do you follow me?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm getting into space now." And so I came on their podcast, and then at the end of the episode, I was like, "By the way, if you guys ever want to contribute to Space Explorer, the door is wide open. I'm looking to build out a team." And that went from kind of a conversation on a video call to, for the Mars 2020 mission earlier this summer, they came to stay with me at an Airbnb, and I contacted my media person with, it was the 45th Space Wing, now it's part of Space Force. It was Air Force, not Space Force, and said, "Hey, I've got 2 photographers with me. Can we get them press passes at the last minute?" And it worked out, and they're photographers and they're really good. And I had a chance to leave a camera out at the launch pad for that Mars mission. And so I had the press pass for that, and they had the camera gear and experience. And we did this thing where we rehearsed what we would do, settings wise, placement, and everything. And I had like notes in a notebook. And on the morning of leaving the camera out there, I was on the phone with them, and they were like walking me through what I was doing. I was talking out loud, and going through the steps of leaving a camera where a rocket is about going to launch in 24 hours, and not being a photographer beyond the iPhone. And that experience was just so good that it made Space Explored feel more real than just my personal, kind of project. And they were excited for it. And Seth Kurkowski is somebody who has done kind of an ambassador program along the Space Coast to get new people involved and caught up to speed. And so he knows everybody on the Space Coast that's anything related to media. And so he was just a natural fit. Same thing with Daryl. And then there's been a situation where somebody who was just a 9 to 5 Mac reader and podcast listener, they said, "Hey, it's cool that you're doing space now. I'd love to contribute if there's ever an opportunity." And a few months went by, and I said, "Now there is one," and they just happily joined. So it's been so cool, taking the experience from 9 to 5 Mac, and just even when I'm talking to them about like what the workday will look like, there's some hesitation of like, well, this is kind of a new thing, so how do we know how it's going to go? And I can say, well, 7 years of 9 to 5 Mac, we've got a really good rhythm going, and it's going to be just like that. So it's largely the experience, and but it's all helped by 9 to 5 Mac is like the anchor of the network.
Can you share just a little bit of the workflow, like from idea to post? I mean, there's a lot of moving pieces, I would assume.
Yeah, it's the big thing comes from just that feeling that I had from seeing a rocket launch and being around very smart people, to what I did when I went home, which was just soak in all the information from podcasts and documentaries and online articles. So what I want to do is just like share those methods with other people and have Space Explored be kind of the medium for where to find that information. And hopefully I'm getting better at that over time. But in general, it's let's take a look at this news story. That's one piece of information today, and if you're following it closely, it's a very specific thing. But let's try to make it big picture so that like you can send it to you. It's kind of like if you were to send a really technical document to a grandparent, and you want to make it really easy to understand and relatable. And so it's that same thing, but it's people who are maybe in their 20s and 30s, and they're technical on the phone on the Mac, but they don't have the context, or I guess kind of the luxury of being able to like sit on space Twitter and like watch things as they happen and develop and have that context all together. So that's kind of the approach. With the people that I bring on, they'll often be acronym heavy, and they've been following this stuff since they were little kids, and so they're really in the know. And I have to remind them often, look, I wouldn't know what this meant 6 months ago, 12 months ago. So we have to keep that in mind. So that context is kind of helpful of just of thinking about a new reader, and we try to do that for Mac too. But 9 to 5 Mac can be pretty technical sometimes. So there's a little bit of assumption that you've been reading for longer than just today, for a lot of the in-depth stories. So, but that's the big thing is just trying to consider the audience, and then look at what it's kind of a feeling. What excites you? What makes you feel like, well, I could write this later, or skip it. If it's something that just you want to share the news right now, you want to share your knowledge about it with other people, then it just kind of gets you, and this is a thing that I want to post as soon as possible. And that's kind of the feeling is what kind of drives it.
Yeah, I have the same experience. It's like I have to get it out of my system
Yes.
I make, it's like
Cathartic.
I make it because I have to.
Yes.
I think if you use that as a guide, that helps.
This episode of Mac Power Users is brought to you by Pingdom from SolarWinds. While you've been listening to this podcast, how would you know if your company's website had gone down, or maybe a personal project? How would you know if customers couldn't click that Buy Now button or access your content? You could stumble across the problem by luck, but that's not good because you need a system. You need something to tell you everything is running smoothly on your site, and more importantly, when it's not. You need Pingdom. Pingdom detects, get this, 13 million website outages every month. That's more than 400,000 outages every day. Pingdom keeps your site and the sites that you love online. It doesn't matter if you're a startup or a Fortune 500 company, you need alerts about any critical website issues. They'll let you customize how you're alerted depending on the severity of the outage. Plus, they'll track and analyze your website's load time so you can see what's affecting the user experience. If you have a site of any size, you need Pingdom. And Pingdom has a no-fuss approach to getting started. All they need is the URL you want to monitor, and they just take care of the rest. So go to pingdom.com/relayfm right now for a 14-day free trial with no credit card required. When you sign up, use the code MPU at checkout to get a huge 30% off your first invoice. Our thanks to Pingdom from SolarWinds for their support of the show and Relay FM.
Zach, one of the favorite things I like to talk to guests about is little apps and services that are helping them get through their days that listeners may not know about.
Sure.
You got any fun ones you can drop on us?
Yeah, I'll do a few space ones just because we're just getting off the topic. But there's another site called Supercluster that is just terrific, and they have the best design, and they have some really cool merch, and they do some really cool stories. But their app, Supercluster, on the iPhone I think it's the best app for getting alerts about launches, both in the U.S. and internationally. With context of like, this is when it's launching, this is where it's launching, this is what it's sending, and here's how to watch it. So Supercluster on the iPhone is a great app to have. Another one, there's a couple more. Xlaunch is one it's mostly SpaceX centric, but it also has integration with space news from different sites, and so that's one that if you kind of want to dip your toe in this area, it's a good one to have. That's Xlaunch. And then Pocket Rocket is a name that usually gets people's attention. It's an app that is all about SpaceX and tracking launches as well. But its party trick is that it uses ARKit. And so you can see the different SpaceX rocket hardware and use Apple's augmented reality feature to, see it through your phone or your iPad. And I think that's really neat in terms of, like I've got a model rocket of a Falcon 9, and then I've got this app. And the app is more detailed than the model is because it's been crafted that way. So those are three that I really like. And then there's interesting hardware that I found. So with the launch coverage, when you leave a camera at a launch pad where you couldn't safely stand, but you can leave a camera there.
Yeah, let me just interrupt there for a second. So you told me about this last week, and it took me a while to process. So you're putting your camera in some place where what would you get vaporized if you stay there? I mean, I don't. What's the risk?
If things go correctly, you're probably okay. But if there's a loss of vehicle, explosion on the pad, then yeah, I think you're gone.
Okay, it's like the splash zone at SeaWorld, but much worse.
Yeah, it's actual life or death. And so with any remote camera that you leave out there, there's a known risk of losing the camera and hoping that the SD card at least survives. But yeah, so you've got to leave cameras out there. But then there's how do you trigger the camera at a specific time? And there's this piece of hardware called MyOps that it attaches to the camera, and you can triggers the camera by sound or light, or you can use the MyOps app on your iPhone to create different scenarios like X number of minutes away plus sound, so that it isn't just sound like if it's thundering that triggers it, but only sound in this window. So MyOps is something that I did not know existed before this experience, and now I'm obsessed with them because you can also do not just rocket launches, but like storm photography, and like water drops, and it's all that what you couldn't do with your hand without shaking the camera or something, but you know, with a trigger, with light as a trigger or sound or just timing, you get some really cool stuff. So MyOps Plus is the name of the hardware. And
And now it just works with SLR hardware, or would it work with an iPhone too? I mean, I don't know I've never used it before.
so the MyOps itself, it has an iPhone app, but it's meant to manage the MyOps and do scenarios that you couldn't do with just the MyOps hardware itself. There's hardware that you can buy to use kind of the MyOps equivalent for your phone, but it's because it's so niche, it's super expensive and kind of untested. But there are launch photographers who have left iPhones at launch pads. Michael Caine is someone's name who comes to mind, who, you know, to do these with your cameras, you know, like you said, using a DSLR. It's got to be weather resistant and, you know, be able to stay in place. So you're like mounting them on tripods and like putting anchors in the ground to hold them down. And most of the time, you either use a weather bag or you have a plastic box that you have around it that keeps it safe from any kind of weather or damage. And Michael Caine is someone who's used, you know, he's got probably an iPhone 11 or so, and his old iPhone 8 Plus was just hanging around. And so he wanted to figure out a way to do this remote camera launch photography from the iPhone. And he built a box that has an iPhone 8 Plus and probably some Mophie batteries and a USB fan to keep everything cool from overheating. And then he leaves the camera running as video, and then he takes stills from the video as like launch photos. And he's got some other tricks because it gets very like shaky and everything. So he's got some things figured out there that I haven't done yet. But yeah, it's that's all been just a brand new world for me, and I have a whole new respect for the jobs of the photographers because without them, I couldn't do any of it. But it's a way I'm using my devices now.
Yeah, so you've got to make it not only secure enough that it doesn't just tip over on its own, but when the blast wave comes through from the rocket launch, I would assume those cameras hit some stress.
And I've seen cameras fall over from wind or storm, you know, that kind of thing. And I've seen scenarios where you've got to, you know, pick the ISO and your focus and everything, and, you know, it's all manual. And sometimes you leave it out there and you don't get anything because your settings are wrong. And like if you're setting up for the daytime and the launch is at night, then you've got to keep that in mind that your viewfinder, you know, or your live preview isn't what you're going to get at that time. One thing that they won't let you do is anything that has that broadcast, even Bluetooth. So if it has that, you know, like you couldn't leave a phone out there and just stream it. That's not allowed. They would come and take it away. but that would be kind of a cool thing. Something else I've got into recently is, I guess, action cameras in general, both from leaving them, because you can also like leave a GoPro and have it run, you know, and have it trigger, but doing that at launch pads has got me into just using my GoPro more, because I've always had a GoPro of some type, and I've always felt like I don't have the lifestyle to really use it, like get cool stuff from it. But this has changed that, and then I got into motorcycles over the summer. And I got a handlebar mount for that, and I've just had a blast with using the GoPro, and you know, setting it up from the phone and everything, and like having the footage go back there. The most recent thing I've got into is Insta360, which is this Insta360 Twin. It's an action camera with a lens on both sides, and it's the thing you're probably familiar with it. Like the Apple Store sells them. If you've got the stick on it, it gets rid of the stick in the image for you. But I just got one of these to test on my motorcycle, and I've had a blast with that. And that's the next thing that I want to do is you know, leave one of those out of the pad and get like a 360-degree video or photo. So
yeah, I actually bought an Insta360 camera last year, you know, just as a toy, and I've had so much fun with this camera. I'm surprised I haven't mentioned it on the show, but it's like an indoor drone when you see the footage, because you've got it on a stick, but you can walk around in a building and just put it up on the stick, and it's amazing. I don't know how it works, that, you know, because it removes the stick from the bottom of it, and you can pan the entire video. Super fun.
Yeah. So it's that. So cameras, and it's all, you know, part of this is, I guess my theme here would be that something that kind of bothered me with my Mac coverage is that from 9 to 5 Mac being work, the way that I used my Apple products was to talk about Apple products, and it just felt like too, you know, inward facing. And you kind of lose focus of how do regular people that aren't covering Apple products use Apple products and like why. And the whole space scene has gotten me into seeing, oh, this is how photographers are using, their Apple products, and this is how they're holding on to like really old versions of software and Mac OS updates and that kind of thing. And the same thing with these action cameras I've been using with my motorcycle. All of a sudden, I've got footage that I've captured because I just love riding and I want to share that experience, And now I'm finding reasons to use like Final Cut on the Mac, when I hadn't had those reasons before.
Yeah, as you're looking to hire people for 9 to 5 Mac, I would recommend looking for people who have non-tech jobs. I mean, my best stories and ideas for Mac Sparky often come from me being a lawyer.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's just, happens.
Gets you outside of that bubble that you might otherwise create.
Yeah. Well, guys, I think it's time that we climb into the DeLorean. I'm going to go ahead and concede here. Get into the DeLorean because I can tell how passionate you are. And was it 88 miles an hour?
That's right.
We'll see you on the other side. This episode of the Mac Power Users is brought to you by Indeed. Go to Indeed.com/MPU to get a free $75 credit to boost your next job post. One of the greatest challenges we all face is taking all of the information available to us and knowing where to focus. This happens in all areas of work and life, including hiring. With Indeed, you have access to the largest pool of talent and can hire the right people quickly. Indeed.com is the #1 job site in the world because Indeed gets you the best people and fast. Unlike other sites, Indeed gives you full control and payment flexibility over your hiring. You only pay what you need, and you can pause your account at any time, and there are no long-term contracts. Plus, Indeed provides powerful tools to make your search that much easier, like sponsored job posts, which are shown to be 3.5 times more likely to result in a hire. With 73% of online job seekers visiting Indeed each month, Indeed is going to get you the important hire you need, just like they have for over 3 million businesses. Right now, Indeed is offering our listeners a $75 credit to boost your job post, which means more quality candidates will see it fast. Try Indeed out with a free $75 credit at Indeed.com/MPU. Now, that's their best offer available anywhere. So go right now to Indeed.com/MPU. Terms and conditions do apply, and the offer is valid through December 31, so get on it. Our thanks to Indeed for their support of the Mac Power Users and all of Relay FM. Wow, man, time travel gives me like whiplash. I feel a little nauseous.
I was looking at my watch and I had on the calendar MPU2, and I just couldn't help think, but like MCU2, and I was like, we're in the end game now.
Yeah, we are in game with magnets, lots and lots of magnets, all recycled. So, what'd you guys think?
There's a lot to think about. I guess let's knock the HomePod Mini out because I think that's the easiest thing to sort of wrap our minds around. It's a tiny, adorable HomePod at a price point that makes sense.
Yeah, I am. I just posted at Max Sparky. I feel like this whole thing started with somebody going to a whiteboard and writing $99.
And it's quite many when you look at the comparison of the regular HomePod. It's shorter than half. It's like 3/4 of a pound heavy, and if you pick up the regular HomePod, it's quite heavy. The verdict is definitely out on how will it sound. Will it sound like a $100 speaker?
Yeah.
But the presentation I thought was like, man, if they would have had all of this ready for the first HomePod, then it would be a lot different for the HomePod. But in reality, like they're showing things that the HomePod can do now, but in this affordable price. So it's,
my takeaway is HomePod brains with not a very good speaker. I mean, that's probably going to be, but I feel like this thing will sell like crazy. Like my barometer is my immediate family, right? Already my daughter already like, oh, that would be a really good Christmas present for me. I'm like, we have like 3 HomePods in our house. She's shown zero interest in them. Yeah. And another thing is, I've lived in an apartment before. The past year I've been in a house, and soon I'll be in an apartment again. And the HomePods are kind of a no-go at an apartment if there's someone above or below you. And just that base. And so I don't think there's a subwoofer in this one. So I'm kind of hoping it's apartment friendly. Yeah, it's interesting though that the actual HomePod didn't get mentioned. Like, there's no update.
Yeah.
It's not still there.
Yeah, I had to go make sure it was still for sale, and it is, but it's still $300.
Yeah, but it is kind of curious, But
one thing HomePod, the main one, does get the Mini will not get is this new feature where you can permanently have Apple TV 4K, so not HD but 4K, permanently use your HomePod as speakers. So that's new, and some software updates that are coming out soon that won't be supported on the HomePod Mini for whatever reason, but they will allow it on the regular HomePod.
Probably because they sound terrible.
Yeah.
It's like your TV speakers probably sound better. Would be my guess.
Sure.
Yeah, I guess we'll find out. I mean, the thing is only 3 1/3 inches tall, so that's adorable, right? Like, I just want to put googly eyes on it and have it as a pet I carry around.
Yeah.
But I would guess that it's going to sound better than other things in this part of the market because it's Apple. But I do think that a full blown HomePod would probably blow it away.
Yeah.
I want to talk quickly about intercom. That was something I didn't expect. Were you guys aware of it? This is a brand new feature, right? This isn't something I just missed.
You didn't miss it. It didn't leak. Brand new feature.
Yeah. Okay. So I think in hindsight, it's obvious. And if you have a couple of these in your house, I can see them getting used. But I also wonder, I remember Walkie Talkie, which kind of came out the same way, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know anybody that uses Walkie Talkie on the Apple Watch, but it seems to me kind of like a cool idea of combining, the Apple ecosystem. The demo where he did the intercom from the car was kind of awesome, and I could actually see myself using that.
I got big into Amazon Echo Dots probably 2-3 years ago, and I had a house that I rented it was just huge, and it was spread out, and I put Dots in every room, and it had this kind of intercom feature where you could announce messages to everybody and say dinner's ready, or you could just send a message to a certain room, but it didn't have that iPhone and iPad side to it where you can also announce to a phone or an iPad, including CarPlay, and that's kind of the Apple difference here. Plus, I guess for $350 and then $300 with HomePod, it wasn't a big focus yet to do this, and they will work with intercom. But now that they've got a $100 version out, then there's something that they made. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. What do you think, Stephen? I mean, your office is separated from the house. I could see this actually working for you.
It is. Hopefully, it's a setting that I could turn on and off on my HomePod in the studio. Because, for instance, I have the wake word. It doesn't work on the HomePod in my office because if I'm on a podcast and I say the magic words or something close to it, I don't want my HomePod going off in the background of my recording. So hopefully there's a setting there. But yeah, I think it's super clever, and you can see how, you're not going to put a $300 HomePod in your kid's room, but you may put a HomePod Mini in there or like in a hallway or something because it is just a lot smaller. And the HomePod always demands attention when you see it because it's so big. And this, I think you could put, and in fact, they showed in some of their shots of that like cutaway house set, which was a really cool set. I want to move
there, by the way.
Yeah.
I just want to live there.
That house looked awesome. Even if it was only half a house, it looked really cool.
I don't care. Yeah.
But, the HomePod Mini kind of blends in, it's with a lamp and some pictures, or it's on a shelf. Like, I think this will fit into people's homes more easily, even from a visual perspective. So yeah, I think this is going to be a home run. We've got 2 HomePods. We had 3. The one in our bedroom died and it was out of warranty.
Oh, no.
And the out of warranty replacement was like, I could just go buy another HomePod. So it's like, well, let me just hold off. And we haven't had one, but we've missed it. And so the HomePod Mini, I'll be definitely picking at least one up for our bedroom, which will be nice too, because it is smaller. I definitely had that problem in our room where the HomePod just dominated the dresser. It's like, okay, well, this one is small and adorable, and it won't be as massive presence, if you will, compared to that.
You could buy 3 for the price of 1 now.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
There was also a feature in fine print that I saw. Now you can set an alarm, or maybe it's coming soon. Set an alarm. You wake up to a song on Apple Music, like you've always been able to do on your phone, but now you can do it from the music speaker too.
Yeah, I hope the HomePod gets some new life. I feel like, it has had a less than stellar debut, but I'm glad that they're still working on it.
Yeah, this keynote was a good presentation of all the things that the main HomePod's learned over the last several years, because most of it, except for intercom, has been there added over time. But HomePod Mini was a good reason to let's go back and do another presentation because none of this was there for the first HomePod, and now it makes it more compelling. Not to mention the price.
It was a much more compelling pitch than the first time that they got on stage and talked about the HomePod, which is like, oh, it's really good at music and also has some smart stuff. And this felt like a way more balanced presentation, which I think is more similar to what people actually want out of products like this.
Mm-hmm. Although I will say it was a poor showing of my actual HomePod that went off 4 or 5 times during the presentation. You know, I mean, they got it. Why can't, I mean, they're Apple. Why can't you have your own trigger word? At one point I wrote down it can do 11 million machine learning operations per second or something. I just want one of those to be, let me reprogram the trigger word for these things.
Yes. Yeah, you can do that on the Echo, and I think it's fantastic. If you have a kid named Alex or a kid named the wake word, that's a bit of a bummer, but you can set your Echo to answer to hello computer, and that's pretty fantastic.
My daughter's name is Sarah. Okay. Mm-hmm. So I have had to apologize to her for that. I'm like, I didn't know they were going to do this when we gave you the name. Sorry. But just think about how many times I say, hey, Sarah, a day. And I'm saying that quietly because I'm afraid my HomePod is going to go off.
He's got to start saying, yo, Sarah.
Yeah. Yeah, Sarah.
Anyway.
Be the cool dad.
Yeah, I gave up on that a long time ago.
I feel that.
iPhone 12. One of the big things that was shocking to me, we're not going to summarize all the news because this is coming out several days after the announcement. If you're listening to Mac Power Users, you probably already heard all the details. But one of the things that stood out to me was how many of the features are across the line. The fancy ceramic glass, the A14 processor, the new display, the super high density XDR, super awesome display, whatever they call it.
Yeah, OLED is on the cheap ones now for the first time.
They really, I mean, the iPhone 12 is not a second class citizen in any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah, we're so far removed from whenever the 10 was clearly the next generation phone over the 8, and the 8 was the main phone. But then the 10S and 10R, it was confusing. It was like the 10S is the main phone, and there's a subversion, which is actually the main phone. They got better with 11 Pro, and now it's super clear that the 12 and even the 12 mini, like those are default phones from past years. And then the Pros are just super high end phones that you need specialized use cases for.
Yeah. Yeah. And the 12 mini, man, well, that was rumored, so it wasn't a surprise. I couldn't help but think, I really hope that guitar guy who did that James Bond riff made some money today. They went straight to it. But and did you see the demo where they had the guy with the huge hand holding the 12 mini? If you watch the video, there's like a 5-second clip in there. They got this guy, like, massive hand holding this small phone. I'm just thinking, oh, come on, man.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And what's cool about the 12 mini is, like you said, it gets all the features of the 12. We don't know about, I guess, battery life in the real world. That may be a little worse because it's just smaller. But compared to the iPhone SE, it has a much larger display, 4.7 inch on the iPhone SE, 5.4 on the 12 mini. But the 12 mini is physically smaller in every dimension, and it weighs less. And, my wife has an iPhone SE because she wanted the smallest possible phone. Now, she doesn't really like Face ID, so I don't know if she would spring for this at some point. But for those people who have wanted a small phone with new features, this really is the first time that's happened since the first SE. I mean, Zach, you just mentioned the 8 was kind of the old generation phone, and the new SE is basically the iPhone 8 with more modern internals, right? It's the same design, same layout, but the 12 mini is a modern iPhone with Face ID and the A14 and all of that stuff, just a lot smaller. And so I think people who were kind of on the first iPhone SE bandwagon where they wanted, that phone had Touch ID and had the same processor as the iPhone 6S, which was new at the time. I think this is going to be really popular. It's not for me, but I think there are going to be a lot of people who are really happy that they can get a new iPhone that is as compact as possible.
And the mini name, I wasn't crazy about it when it kind of was rumored, but it's kind of grown on me because they really have taken what is the iPhone 12 through 12 Pro Max and miniaturized it in the same casing, just smaller without compromise, from as far as we know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I didn't hear any distinction, and we can talk. There are distinctions on the Pro, but on the iPhone 12, they're the same phone, just one smaller.
Yeah,
and lighter, and probably worse battery, but very small in your pocket. And half of our species wears pants with smaller pockets than the other half,
or no pockets. I mean, it's I would lose my mind. The thing that I think is interesting too about the 12 mini, and I'm really curious what y'all think about this. It's very hard for Apple to walk back a product decision. And I wonder, are we just going to say there's a 12S or a 13 next year? Is the mini now something that we're just going to see moving forward? Or is it kind of like a one-off and it will stick around and kind of become the new SE over time? I'm hopeful that it's the former, that it sticks around and is updated in line with all of its siblings. But I could kind of see Apple, kind of like the Tim Cook, Jeff Williams, Operation King Apple, maybe letting this kind of slide and become the cheaper phone next year. I don't know.
So they're still selling the 10R and 11.
Yeah.
So they've got some. They could get rid of the 10R and keep the 11 around for another year, but hopefully they keep it going every year, because it's not something that I think. I'm not sure it can be as cheap as the other phones can be after a couple of years, because it is still high end.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it's a bet. I mean, they're laying a chip on the table and they're going to see how it sells, and if people like it and they buy enough of them, I would imagine they have plans for an iPhone 13 mini, but that doesn't mean we're going to see one if the thing flops.
Yeah.
But it's a nice, overall, I mean, this has been an overarching theme of Mac Power users, I think, in the last 6 months, is I think we're all observing Apple finally kind of getting its house in order in terms of products. And I mean, the phone is a good example. We have a small phone, a regular phone, a fancy phone, and a big fancy phone. And, that kind of makes sense. I want to talk about some of the general features that go across the platform. The first one, isn't as big of a shock because of all the rumors, but the new industrial design. Mm-hmm. Zach, what do you think of it?
That's the most appealing thing to me, because seeing the newness is what makes me have that kind of envy of having that phone. So more than 5G and things we'll talk about in addition to the design, just that design it looks like a very small iPad Pro. And if you've got, the Pro Max version, then it's not that small. It's just a slightly smaller iPad Pro, and that looks good to me. And I wasn't so sure how it would look and feel, because the rounded curves of the current phone since the 6 are kind of nice, especially with bigger screens, because it just fits in your hand really nice. But the way that cutting off the sides and flattening them makes the bezels look so thin, that's a pretty cool visual effect, because just looking at it screen on, you don't, there's the bezel of like the screen, but then there's the side of the phone that kind of bulbs out on the current phones, and these new ones, they just look like they've been shaved off on the sides and they look very thin.
What do you think, Steven?
Yeah, no, I agree. I was just here looking at the press photos, and it does look very tidy. I didn't mind the rounded edges, but it did make the phone a little bit slippery, and it couldn't sit up on its side, or and sometimes that was nice to take a photo like in the iPhone 4 and 5 days. But I think it's a nice modern look, and I think it looks really clean. Now they're sort of marred by antenna lines, and if you're in the US, the phone that is compatible with Verizon, it has like this big weird cutout on the side that looks like the Apple Pencil charging pass-through on the iPad Pro. But other than that, I think it does look really nice, and I think the flat sides do a lot to show off the new finishes, especially on the Pro models where the rails are stainless steel, like that blue stainless steel and the gold. And they talked a little bit about they're using, new new technologies in building these things using PVD coating and some other things that they've used on the watch, but are newer on the iPhone to really make those stainless steel bands shine. And I think that this is going to look really high end. Like if you pick up an iPhone 4 or especially the iPhone 5 and 5S, those still feel like really premium products now all these years later. And I think they've aged well in part because of the flat sides. And I think that this is going to make the design language that this is killing started with the iPhone 6. I think it's going to make those phones look a little bit chunkier than they actually were.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can all agree, I mean, without any dispute, that the iPhone 4 was the best looking iPhone ever so far. And if you disagree, you can just email Zach. I'm sure you can find his email on 9 to 5 Mac. But either way, getting back to that square edge to me is like, I love that look so much. And what I didn't expect, I mean, we saw the leaks with the cases, but what we didn't know was how reflective it was going to be. And I noticed with both the iPhone 12 promo and the iPhone 12 Pro promo, they were really dialing up the reflectivity on the devices. So I'm really curious to see one in person. But yeah, man, I am in. And I hope they don't go back to the bar of soap round design for a very long time.
And I'm just waiting for the squared off watch.
Yeah. Okay, the glass thing seemed like a bigger deal than people expected. 4 times better improvement for glass breakage with the ceramic coating. I suspect ceramic will scratch, but maybe I'm wrong. But I'm looking forward to the YouTube videos because people are going to be doing crazy stuff with these phones to test that glass next week, probably. But what do you guys think? Is that a big deal or is that a ho-hum deal?
So for me, my experience with the recent iPhones has been that a few years ago, they were scratch resistant, but they shatter easily. And then in the last 2 years, they've been more shatter resistant, but very scratch prone. And this is like the best of both of those, where it's both shatter and scratch resistant. I think ceramic, if it's like what you see on the stainless steel watch and higher, is that they won't scratch and nick as easily. And, but they ceramic in itself is more prone to shattering if it's dropped on a surface. But because this is just a coating, that hopefully there's a layer there that also resists against the shattering, so you get the best of both. So that's what I'm hoping for, at least.
Maybe I got it wrong. I hope so. But I mean, these things are going to be out in a couple of weeks, so we'll. Mm-hmm. And there are crazy people on YouTube that will do crazy things to brand new iPhones. You can count on it.
Yep, it's a whole industry out there.
Yeah, we didn't get the Touch ID button. I wanted that, but I also realized that the design time for these things is a lot longer than 6 months, and they didn't know about COVID last year, so too bad on that one. Maybe next year.
Yeah, hopefully. I think it would be a really nice addition. I'm looking forward to seeing how that works on the iPad Air, which is, as of this recording, you still can't pre-order. I don't know when that thing is coming, but yeah, it's still just Face ID, and obviously that's a little difficult in our current era, but time will tell if they're able to bring that next year.
Something that's too ho-hum for all of us is every year when they come out and show just how amazing their current silicon is, and once again this year, it's like, what they say, 50% faster than any competition. And it's just congratulations to the Apple, silicon team, because they every year they just race out ahead of the competition. And I think that's really the foundation of so many of the features we've got today. I mean, the reason why you can apply HDR to every frame of video is because you have a processor that can keep up with it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're killing it, right? And they're steadily marching towards Apple Silicon Max. We didn't see any about that in this event. So I guess maybe there'll be a third event, maybe in November or early December. But yeah, they continue to fire on all cylinders. And like we spoke about in the iPad Air sort of aftermath, they didn't go into a lot of detail on the A14, and we saw more of that here. They clearly they wanted the iPhone, I think, to carry the torch for the new processor. Yeah. But sometimes that's not how it works out. There have been times where the iPad is ahead or behind. It varies a little bit. But yeah, they continue to do really good work there. And I would imagine too that the A14 could be one way we have the iPhone 12 mini because it is going to be so much more efficient. That's a huge deal for them every single year. And in a smaller phone with a smaller battery, that's a really important aspect to this. And so again, Apple knows everything that Apple is doing internally, right? They work together, they bring all these teams together. So I would imagine that the A14 and the iPhone 12 mini coming out at the same time, that is not by mistake. I would imagine those were really done hand in hand.
Yeah. You go. I think you go from 7 nanometers to 5 nanometers, and I'm not quite sure like what a nanometer looks like, at a glance, but
very tiny.
Every bit helps inside that small case that's packed to the gills with technology.
Yeah.
Well, it's Zach. I can explain it. It's the 5 nanometer is 2 less than the 7.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, a little bit. It's a little bit smaller. It's not quite
take a nanometer and another nanometer.
A little bit more than 1, a little bit less than 3. Yeah. The iPhone 12 camera system got a 1.6 lens, nice, and I think pairing the widescreen lens with the standard lens, I think is the right move. That's a solid camera.
Yeah, this seems like for iPhone 12, even the mini and the base iPhone 12, that these cameras answer some of the obvious fixes that were going to be coming to the 11 family of phones, like the fact that you couldn't do night mode with the ultra wide camera before. Now you can, and the same thing with the front camera. So it's like that's the kind of year over year evolution you come to expect, and they didn't disappoint with that.
Yeah, and nice colors we didn't mention. It's a nice crop of colors this year.
Yeah, they want to tweak that every year now, like they did in the iPod days. I think that's a way to not only show that you have the new phone, but it could be an enticing reason to upgrade if you're on the fence. One thing we haven't talked about yet, though, that's across all the iPhones is MagSafe. They've brought that name back, and what this is basically a series of magnets in the back of the phone that can align a couple of things. So they're using it with their cases. And as of this recording, there are no leather cases on the store for these new phones. They're all the silicone rubbery cases, which makes me a little sad. I like the leather cases. But they're using magnets to help keep those cases on. And if you look at the front of the cases, they don't go up over the screen the way the current ones do and kind of grab. And so the magnets are helping keep those on. They also have a leather wallet thing that you can attach with magnets. This may be the first year I try to become like an iPhone wallet person. I think I'm going to explore that. But most interestingly is the charging puck. So it looks like a big version of the Apple Watch charging puck. Like that's kind of what I thought of. And it snaps into place with the magnets. You can use it through one of Apple's cases. And interestingly, that charging puck also works on phones as old as the iPhone 8, which is when wireless charging was introduced to the iPhone. So those phones don't have those magnets, so I guess you still have the same problem that you have to kind of line everything up. But I don't know about y'all. I don't really have a problem hitting my wireless charging pad. Like maybe I've just gotten good at it over the last 3 or 4 years. But this is cool, but I don't think it solves a problem that I had. I don't know. What do y'all think?
I think the biggest thing is that it can do up to 15 watts now, which is you're doubling the 7.5 watts that you could do before. And
you trade nanometers for watts, is what you're saying.
That's right. And I hadn't thought a whole lot about it, but in the keynote they showed missing the magnet altogether so that you weren't charging overnight at all on a wireless charger, or not being perfectly centered so that you weren't getting the full efficiency of wireless charging. And with the new phones, then you are, and so you can have wireless charging 3x faster than that 5-watt puck, the charger that used to come in the box. So.
Yeah,
there's a part of me that just loves the kind of component / Lego nature of this.
Yes.
Just like and they stack.
Magnets
That's the
are
other
cool.
thing you didn't match. You put the rubber case on, but you can stack the wallet on the back of the rubber case, and you can even charge through the case. And there's something about that. And it's an open, it's magnets. And as we saw, anybody can make stuff with magnets. I doubt you have to go through an Apple, certification or anything, because they're magnets. Just like with the watch band, people just make stuff that fit it. So we could have this very interesting ecosystem of cases and connectors and things you can snap onto your phone. And I hate prying cases off my phone. Like the Apple clear plastic case I keep on my phone But then every time I go to take it off, I feel like I'm going to break my phone trying to get that thing off. And that solves this problem. My only complaint about this is the name, because it just feels like a dagger through my heart as I look at my MacBook with no MagSafe on. I'm like, oh, you can get MagSafe now from Apple, but your computer still doesn't have that cool thing where you can unplug power.
Yeah, I agree. But Apple is a company that brings names back, right? MacBook has been back and then died again. They've reused iBook before they renamed it all just books. They're not opposed to going into their history and reviving a name. So
Yeah, it saves money on legal.
yeah, you already got it trademarked, right? You just dust that off and keep using it.
You want to talk about the iPhone 12 Pro now?
Yeah, so it continues to be the top of the line. I think they've, like we were talking about a second ago, they've done a good job at saying, the 12 is the standard, but if you want more, the 12 Pro is here for you. And so it still comes with the 3 cameras, and it comes with LiDAR, which they're using not only for AR, but what I think is really cool is for focus in low light. And that means that you can do night mode portrait photos now, which, I mean, look, Apple's examples on their website are all under ideal conditions, but they look really impressive, really impressive. And so I think that camera stuff on the Pro, just like last year, will definitely pull people to that higher end if they're interested in that.
Yeah, I mean, so you get the better materials, the stainless steel. It's going to be heavier and a more solid phone, I'm sure. You get the extra zoom lens, and it's in addition to the 2 standard lenses. You get the LiDAR sensor. Interestingly, in this case, we've got a difference between the 2 iPhone 12 Pros. The bigger one has a bigger image sensor. Zach, have you looked into that at all?
We're so close to the keynote. I haven't had a chance to dig in yet, but I think it seems to be though that if you want to have the best low light photos or videos in this case, then the Max is the one to go with this time around.
Yeah, it's so funny because I have been the last several months in my head. I've decided I'm going to get the small phone this time. I'm going to get the small Pro. This will be the year. I had temporarily a small Google Pixel phone just to goof off with, and I'm like, yeah, this year I'll just go with the small one. And then they said 87% improvement in low light performance, and I'm like,
that's massive.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
Yeah, the sensor on the wide angle is better. The optical zoom also goes from 4x to 5x on the Pro Max compared to the Pro, and the focal length they're a little bit on the portrait camera is a little bit different on the Pro Max as well. I think it goes from 50 something to 62, or I forget what it was, but it's slightly different. I don't think in day-to-day life the cameras are going to be vastly different, but I think if you do shoot in low light, or you do you really push it, I think it probably would be noticeable kind of at the edges, at those extreme examples. But I'm like you, David. I had the 10s Max, and it ended up being, I thought, too big for me. So my 11 Pro is the regular sized one, which is smaller even than the 12 Pro, because the 12 Pro picks up the old 10R and 11 size now. So the iPhone 12 and 12 Pro are the same size. The Max is big, but sitting here today, I really feel called to it for that camera stuff, even though it is, like I just said, sort of, yeah, it's going to be better in low light, and night mode will be better, and sort of those things. I kind of hate leaving that on the table, and so I might end up going big just for that camera upgrade, as slight as it may seem.
Yeah, there's pictures that you will actually miss on the other phones that you will catch on the Max, and that's for me just reviewing photos I've taken. Sometimes it's rare, but sometimes I'm disappointed. I thought that was going to be better, and it's not actually usable. And with the Max, then this year, the odds are in your favor that it's going to turn out well.
You're not helping me, man.
Well, I you know what you should do? I just looked before we started recording. In the last couple of months, I'd say about 70% of my pictures were taken indoor. And I think that's the thing, right? Low light to me equals indoor. And if you take a lot of indoor pictures, then this will be a better camera. If you take most of your pictures outdoor in big light, it doesn't matter. You're fine. Yeah, but that might be a good way to kind of look into it. And another thing is so I've got the big iPad, and then my wife took over my other iPad because it's a long story, but I thought, well, actually having the bigger phone laying in bed could be kind of nice too. But I was ready to go the small. In fact, I started a thread in the MPU forums and asked everybody, did like big or small and why. And everybody's very passionate about this. I mean, everybody has an opinion. I'm going to link that thread in the show notes because it's just kind of a fun thread to read. But I really think, it's like, damn it, Apple. Just when I was ready to go small, you made a difference between them. And even if it's not that big of a difference, I will be thinking about it every time I take a picture.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the other thing for me is I don't really notice the big phone. It doesn't bother me in my pocket. My pants are big enough and my hands are big enough.
And it's redesigned this year, so it might feel more compact than it has been in previous years.
Yeah, it's never been an issue for me, but I think the smaller phone is more comfortable, but it's not like a big deal to me. The LiDAR, is that going to make a difference? I guess Steven talked about already. It should increase the resolution or focus of your pictures.
Especially in low light, it was like a laser, right? That it uses that to determine distance and where to focus on the subject if it can't see it otherwise. And I don't think the iPad does that. Even though the iPad has LiDAR, I think that's just for augmented reality AR kit stuff, not for the camera. And then I think with this, they're introducing it for the camera as well.
I like that it's starting at 128 gigabyte. I think that's smart. It's like, so you buy the entry level one. That's a good phone for most people.
Mm-hmm.
Remember the days of 16 gigabyte iPhones, guys? Wasn't that long ago.
Yeah, I actually was just thinking about that during this event and how that was so small. And now, I have a 256 gig phone 11 Pro and it's almost full because I have my photo library on it. It's nice that they brought bigger sizes to the entry prices. It's nice that the entry prices are basically where they were last year, especially with the inclusion of 5G, which I feel like I don't have much to say about 5G. I haven't experienced it. It's in my area, I believe, even on my carrier. We're just going to have to see how that works, And one thing I did not like about this event was Verizon's heavy presence. Not only did we have their CEO sort of yelling at us for 10 minutes, but they were like, oh, and with Verizon 5G, it does this. And Verizon's 5G is different technically than some of the others because they're using millimeter wave and some of the others aren't to the same extent. 5G is very complicated and Apple's got to play nice with all these carriers, but it felt like there's a lot of Verizon in this keynote that I didn't need, especially as a former angry Verizon customer now on AT&T and still mostly angry at my carrier. Like, I'm sure there were political reasons, but as a consumer watching it, I was like, man, there's a lot of Verizon in Apple's keynote today.
It was unclear until they had the slide up. Is AT&T even going to be supported?
Yeah.
I was like, do I have to switch to Verizon now?
Yeah, it kind of read as maybe they're only going with, I don't know, they're not, but it definitely read that way. And we'll just have to see, people have to figure this out. Just like LTE, right? With the iPhone 5, there were complications and you had to make sure that the phone you got worked on your network. And there'll be some of that with this. And, what will it mean to take an iPhone overseas? We all just have to work through that, just like we did, whatever it was, 6 or 7 years ago.
You guys want some blind speculation?
Yes,
sure.
Please.
Yeah, I deal with, in my other job, I deal with a lot of people that like where one company really wants something and the other company is okay with it, And quite often there are very interesting deals that arise out of those circumstances. In this case, we've got the carriers that really want the 5G to become a big thing. And we've got the biggest iPhone company or the biggest phone company. I could imagine a scenario where, maybe Verizon is subsidizing the cost of these chips. The reason they're in all the phones is because Verizon wanted it. I could see a lot of backroom dealing going on as that phone came to fruition.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
Yeah. My first thought was, oh no, AT&T's being punished for their 5GE label that they put on LTE phones.
They should be punished for that.
Yeah, they should.
And it is confusing. Like, I've got a pitch from Verizon in my inbox that talks about Verizon ultra wideband coming to 19 cities, 9 stadiums, and 4 airports. Like, whenever you had to think about stadiums and airports for having support for a wireless version of cellular.
I'll say this though, the future of that, which is not here today, like I say future very specifically.
Long term.
That really could be cool, right? Like, we've all been to a basketball game or a football game and you just have no cell service. Like, I know where like my college football team plays at the stadium, there are always like AT&T and Verizon trucks like in the area, like beaming LTE at the stadium, right? To try to keep it up. And at our NBA stadium, they've actually installed like really good public Wi-Fi because the owner of the team owns some high-end networking company. But that is a challenge, right? And if 5G can solve that, that'll be fantastic, right? I would love to be able to go to a football game and get a phone call, if like one of my kids gets sick and I need to come home, because right now I just can't. And so if that materializes, that will be fantastic. But we're nowhere near that now, unless you have a 5G phone, you're on the right carrier, you're in one of those 9 stadiums, and I guess the pandemic's over, so you can go to a game.
Yeah, I was immediately thinking, of course, Disneyland, where I go, and you've got poor coverage
football
consistently. Yeah, exactly. Football for me then. But yeah, it's same thing. You can't. The place is closed. You don't know when it'll be safe to go back if they do open it. But that's nice. One concern I have is I've read some articles that will argue that the 5G could actually be a slowdown under some circumstances, and I don't really know the technology about it. I'm gonna have to read into it. I don't want to get into it today.
We did see that these phones will selectively use 5G, I think, based on what you're doing, and then not use 5G even if it's available, I believe, if it doesn't think you need those speeds. So I don't think that's quite what we saw when LTE was introduced with the iPhone 5, but it does seem to be a lot more selective about when to use 5G because of battery management and power management.
Yeah. Well, I feel like Apple's probably learned a few lessons along the way.
Yeah.
So, guys, what are you getting?
I am down for a HomePod Mini or 2. I'm curious about the sound quality, and that includes in a stereo pair. The phone stuff, if I were to do a phone, I mean, they are compelling. I like the iPhone 12 and 12 mini colors the most. Like, I like the red color, like the blue on that one better, I think. But I've tried using a phone without the 2X lens, and I just use that camera so much that I can't do it long term.
Same.
There's photos that I miss again, and so in this case, then it'd be the Pro Max. Fortunately, that becomes kind of a November question and not a mid-October question in terms of deciding when to buy, if to buy. But cut out all that I said before. Whatever. I think I could avoid buying it at launch, but what would be hard for me to do is like avoid buying it like come February or March when I get kind of bored, and so at that point, why not buy one? So I'm still like 60-40 leaning toward buying one, but it would be the Pro Max, and I like that for the same $1099 price, which is expensive, but it's not more than it used to be. You get double the storage from 64 to 128, and so that's nice.
All right, Zach, I want you to listen to me right now. Nobody's listening. It's just you and me, okay? Okay. Now, the thing you were saying at the beginning of the show about, take the year off, it's okay, buddy. Just get a new phone. Just get a new phone. It's okay.
Yeah. And honestly, it probably will come to be with, what review units are like too, because I can probably scratch the itch for a new phone if I get like, I don't know, the 12 mini, because then it's way different than my current phone. And it's like, oh, I'll have this around for a little while, but then my main phone is still the one from last year. But, it just depends on the situation there. But you're right. There's a good reason to justify buying new phones every year when it's for work, and you can do it for your job.
How about you, Steven?
Yeah, definitely a HomePod Mini. Probably just one. I've got sort of a situation where I would like something like that in my garage, because I've turned the corner of my garage into a home gym, and right now I just have a set of like cheapo PC speakers out there, and there's just a lightning dongle permanently attached to the cable. and I have those out there because, right, it's cold in the winter and hot in the summer. And if they die, it was like the cheapest thing at Best Buy 5 years ago. It doesn't really matter to me if they die. HomePod, I feel like, is a lot more complicated, and maybe I don't want to leave it out there. So I think just one HomePod mini for now for the bedroom. And I think as it stands right now, iPhone 12 Pro Max, probably in silver. So I tend to alternate phone colors just to keep it interesting. And I did the space gray on the 11 Pro, and I like the new graphite, which looks very similar, but I really don't like the dark stainless steel. It really gets fingerprinty, and I do carry my phone out of a case a good bit of the time. So the white and silver, I had my iPhone 10 that way, and I've had stainless steel watches in the past. I like the way sort of quote raw stainless steel looks, and so I'm thinking about going silver this time with the big boy Max phone.
Speaking of, we were talking about space stuff before, and the raw stainless steel just reminds me of like rocket material.
Yes, it does look very sort of SpaceX, or even like Falcon 9, or even like the Saturn V, right? Like white and clean. Exactly. And
that's right.
Yeah, well, you've talked me into it. I like the blue, but for the same reason I wouldn't get a product red watch, which I also really like. I've seen one in person now. I feel like that's too much personality in a way. Like if I want to change the case color, or I don't know, I feel like going with a color is too big of a commitment. So silver is really clean looking. So I think that's what I'll do.
Yeah, I too really like the silver and white phone look, but I'll probably end up getting a blue one, and I'll get, as I said earlier, I'm going to get the big one. And I just, whatever, I'll get the big one.
Yeah, it's done. We have unanimity here.
Interestingly, my wife has an iPhone 10, which is really due for an upgrade. And I asked her, because she watched the event with me, I'm like, do you want a new one? And she's like, no, I think I'll wait. And I asked her why. And she said, well, number one, I'll just use your phone when I want to take nice pictures. And number two, I really like my Mickey Mouse cases. She has a whole collection of Mickey Mouse. It's just kind of funny to me, people who are not super into this stuff. That's like the decision point,
Yeah, I think that's why Apple has kept compatibility with things like Apple Watch bands, because people will put off $1,000 purchase so they don't have to replace a $20 accessory. That's just something about humans who aren't us think about.
Yeah. Well, Zac, thank you. You're the first Mac Power User guest in over 10 years of the show to do a 2 recording session with us.
Thank you.
And travel in time at the same time. So that was pretty cool. Let us know what you think about the new Apple hardware and actually mainly hardware, over at the forums at talk.macpowerusers.com. Did I miss anything, Steven?
No, I think we've been recording now for like 36 hours. Well, people don't know, the show's only an hour and 45 minutes long this week, but what you haven't heard is that we actually stayed on the phone the whole time. So I'm
I thought we weren't going to share that.
Yeah.
But,
Steven snores so bad.
Yeah. I really need to run inside to use the restrooms. We could just wrap this up.
Yeah, we laughed, we cried. Man, we that was really a thing, guys.
Zac screams in his sleep. It's really upsetting.
David wouldn't go to bed with that Pacific time zone he has.
Yeah, I know. My watch told me, guys. Okay, so that's going to wrap it up today. We went a little long and got into the kind of stuff we usually talk about in more power users, but we wanted to include it in the full show today because it's Apple Announcement Week, and that's fun. Thank you to our sponsors, and that's our friends over at 1Password, Squarespace, Pingdom, and Indeed. Thanks to Zac Hall for coming over from 9 to 5 back and time traveling with us and having a good time talking about all the new Apple hardware. We will see you next week.